Thank you. I'd like to call to order the Assembly Budget Finance Committee meeting, and I'd like to start with introductions. We can start at this end, please.
Mike Chadwick, Internal Audit.
Ryan Silver, O&D.
Dan Moore, Treasury.
Bill Evans, Assembly.
Pete Peterson, Assembly.
Elvie Gray Jackson.
Amy Dembowski.
Dick Franny.
Shirley Nelson, EDAC teacher.
And in the audience, please.
Rosella Young, Legal Assistant, Assembly Counsel Office.
Debbie Kelly, I'm Amy Wilson, Office.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the MOA financial status, and whoever wants to do that presentation, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'll start. I don't have a lot to add from what I reported last month on the city revenues. We look at the revenues for general government 100 funds. Most all departments are in the positive, which is good. The reasons for positive are virtually the same. The biggest change that we have is personal property tax is about to be billed on August 1st. And so the assessor's office has produced a certified roll, and when you compare the amount of that billing to what it was last year, it's about 2.5% less. So last month when I reported, we projected a $2.4 million overall variance. Now we're down to about $1.3 million. So the primary, almost the sole reason for that is personal property tax. There is a possibility that there might have been some businesses that didn't file timely that may be coming on the late roll, but the chances of that are not great. So I think we're going to have a variance there.
So Dan, just for clarity, so 1.3 million positive, not a negative, correct?
Yeah, overall
Okay,
positive.
thank
yeah.
you.
Still overall positive, but that personal property did take away about half of the variance that was reported the positive variance that was reported last month. We do meet internally with the executive group once a month. The new administration has started, and so our first meeting with members of the new administration is going to be next Tuesday. And so as soon as we give them the full briefing, what we'll do is we'll provide all this information to the Assembly, I guess hopefully by the 25th. I think that should be near next week in August. So.
Okay. Any questions for Dan? Lance, do you have anything you'd like
Just a
to
couple
share?
things, Madam Chair. So the OMB staff is doing two things right now, and they will be meeting with both of them this week so we can share this with the administration. The first one is just to, now that we're in the middle of the year, compare budgets to actuals, to project out to the end of the year to make sure that we're going to make budget in 15. All departments have reported with the exception of 2, and they are working on it, so we'll have all of that done. So we can give the administration some information about how we're going to get. Right now, it looks pretty good based on what we have. The second item they're working on is they're taking the personnel after first quarter, and then they are putting the 2000 in, starting to build a base for 2016 operating budget using the personnel from first quarter, and then adding the 2016 salary and benefits cost to those. And then they also have some information on the revenue projections, which are going to give the mayor some information on how we look tentatively for 16, and then prepare a memo for the department heads to give them some guidance on to do that. On the regular budget schedule, we're about a week behind our typical process, so we got a little bit of catching up to do. I can't forecast how it looks right now, so my goal is to share that with the administration as early as next Tuesday, preliminarily, and then if he has questions, then we'll respond to those, and then obviously work back with this committee. And then I think we do know that there's going to be a large event occurring in Anchorage in 2015 at the end of August, at our council meeting, where a lot of communities from a lot of countries from all over the world will be in Anchorage, and there will be an additional APD presence at that. And so that will be an additional cost that we haven't budgeted for. So I know that APD is working with the federal government to kind of manage that expectation and hopefully get some reimbursement. If we do get reimbursed, we would be fortunate to get it in 15 so that we can include it in our budget. So as that materializes, we'll know a little bit more, but that's a known expense that we haven't budgeted for. It's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when I know more, and the administration knows more, we'll obviously let you know. So I think in the next week or so, we'll have better information on what we can share.
Any questions? Ms. Dembowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Lance, in the spirit of cooperation, just to give you a heads up, I'm not one that looks for gotcha moments, so I'm going to clearly articulate to you now what I'll be looking for as the mayor's appointments come through. I already know your position as OMB director is one of them, which was not funded in the 2015 budget. Therefore, as you come forward with these new positions, these new PCNs that essentially don't have funding, you need to articulate to us where that funding is coming from. Because the one thing I won't do is vote for a confirmation if we don't have money to pay the employee, because I think that's only fair that they get paid. So I don't want to catch you off guard. You know, it's something that I watch new positions be created, and I think the new leadership has an opportunity to structure government within reason the way they think will be most effective. But they also need to know how they're paying for it, especially since there are positions that are being created that have never been funded. So just fair warning, that's a question that I will be looking for. And I'm sure you'll have an answer. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Zablosky. Mr. Trainee?
Lance, which group do you say is coming in here?
There's an international conference about, it's called the Arctic Council, I believe is the name of it. It's basically nations from the Arctic that deal with Arctic issues, and they're meeting in Alaska and they're meeting in Anchorage this year. The conference has been in different places.
What time frame?
It's the end of August.
And we get the council, the United States does, so.
I had heard that this particular meeting, potentially Senator Kerry or Secretary of State Kerry is going to be here for that one.
I've heard something about the president coming out here, so I was wondering.
This is what I
He's
do
supposed to
know.
be coming here in August. I wonder if that was in conjunction with it. So we're going to have increased security no matter what. And these things get a lot of international people that drop in because of that happening. So have the police department tell us what they need. So we'll see how we can help.
I'll let the chief know.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Mr. Steele?
My question is a little bit easier, I think, in terms of, are you fully staffed? That's a question that I had in my mind, because I knew you had some holes.
Which department? Transit? Municipal
No.
manager, OMB?
Actually, financial in general. You know, we've got the SAP and...
In the Office of Management budget, we are fully staffed.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was just going to say, if the Arctic Council convention brings significant people to town, they'll be staying in hotels, we'll be collecting bed taxes, so maybe that will offset some of the extra cost of providing security.
But I don't think some of the protesters will be staying in hotels, probably tents.
We got plenty of it.
Are you gentlemen finished?
Protesters.
Thank you. Are you finished, Mr.
Yes.
Peterson? Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions. Okay, first off, we received a 2016 budget schedule from Maryland at the last committee meeting, and as soon as that gets updated, can you please make sure that not just this committee, but all assembly members receive it, because that's really important for us to have. Yeah, I appreciate that. And second, for assembly members who don't know, Mr. Chairman Trainee and I have scheduled confirmation hearings for folks, not for everybody, but for certain positions that we have to confirm. And the first confirmation hearings are going to happen on the 24th. And I'm going from memory now, and that's Bill Falsey? Is it Falsey? Is his last name? Okay. Mr. Falsey, Lance, Mr. Roper, who am I missing? There's Karen Williams, the ER director, Dennis LeBlanc. I think there's 6 total, but anyway, you'll see the notice ahead of time. But I just wanted to mention that to folks, and the administration is already aware of it.
Friday.
The 24th.
And Madam Chair, are you planning on that being during the day or in the evening?
Oh no, that's during the day.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
It's a very important day in my family. My daughter turns 19.
Rock on, rock on. No, it'll be during the day, right, Mr. Chairman?
Bring a cake and
Yeah.
celebrate.
She won't be there.
No, during the day. And this isn't the first time that the Assembly has had confirmation hearings, and, I just want to say that it's the Assembly's prerogative to have confirmation hearings with new appointments, in particular when there's a new administration. Mr. Trainee?
It just gives us a chance to interview the people being appointed, see what their philosophy is. We had a director of Human Services a while back. We asked her, who do you work for? She said, I work for the mayor. I don't care I don't care what policy you set, I work for the mayor, I'll do whatever they tell me to. And I want them to understand that they work for the citizens of Anchorage, no matter where they're at. Just want to talk to each of these people. So that's the reason for this.
Great idea.
Mr. Steele?
Hopefully, we have an information packet with resumes and things like that to start with before we come to the decision.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. We're pretty organized, and you're going to have that and probably other things too.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
Great minds think alike.
That's right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so if Tom comes to the meeting before we end and he has something he'd like to report to us, we'll just make that possible. Okay? Thank you. Ms. Nelson?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think, as we stated last time, one of the things the Budget Advisory Commission is working on is meeting with department heads to talk about challenges, pros, and cons of what's going on in the departments to help with the transition team. And those reports are just coming in to me now, and I am leaving on vacation, but I hope to have them formalized, and we'll discuss them in our August meeting and possibly have a little more formal presentation in the September meeting. It's been very informative on the information, and we're looking for possible common threads between all the departments on what they're being faced with. And I have a nice report that came in from the Department of Health and Human Services on the challenges, very well done, just on what they're faced with. Also, I've met with Brian Robbins with the Assessor's Office, and one common thread that is already coming up is the IT. I think, the Assessment Office is faced with not keeping up with the latest, and he didn't want to quote a figure, but we're talking millions to possibly update for where it needs to be. I think that's kind of one of the general things that's coming out in a lot of these reports, that and staffing. I just got a
Can I
note-
interrupt you for a moment, please,
Yes.
just for clarification? Thank you. So you're talking about property appraisal, then you said IT, so are you talking about the comma system?
No, well, I don't know. I don't know. Brian was just talking about they don't have the latest ability to do the assessments.
Yeah, that's the comma system.
Okay.
That needs to be updated, yeah.
Right, and
Thank
they
you.
had got a quote a few years ago, and I think it was 2 to 3 million, and he said he didn't want to be quoted, but he thought it would be substantially more.
Okay.
And stuff. So that was that. We met with the court, same with some issues there. We did all the departments. So Joe Riggs just finished with the police department and the fire department, and we got some bullet points on that. And I had met with Lance a couple days ago to introduce the VAC and so on. And I think we have some very good open communication, and Lance has asked to be included to see these remarks that are coming through as soon as possible to help with the budget process. That's coming sooner than later. So I'm going to send him an informal synopsis in the next couple of days on just 2 to 3 points per department, the ones that I can do at least to give him heads up on that. But like I said, I'm leaving town and I'm in New Sweden, Maine, and communication is very difficult there. But I'll do my best before we leave. So that was one of the things. Also, we discussed about the 6-year fiscal plan to be involved with that as far as the commission. And also the property tax exemption, we want to continue that dialogue just to keep that open. And you've talked about we'll invite nonprofits to the table, and we want to continue with that discussion. And I think one thing that's coming up with the commission too that we want to just review with ML&P, for example, on what the status is. And we, as a commission, want to stay recommending that ML&P remain as it is under the tax cap, just in general, is what we're starting to look at and stuff. But we would like to just review.
Are you talking about the MUSA MISA?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's just become up. Other than that, I think that's about it. So we will have our August meeting, and I will send you. Thank you.
Any questions? Ms. Dombrowski?
Madam Chair, more of a comment. One of the things we've talked about multiple times, and I really think this is an opportunity for the new administration, when she's talking about the property assessment, and then if we link in with it, the tax exemptions. One of the issues that we have heard in this committee and others from property appraisal is some that have claimed nonprofit status for a number of years, they just don't have the resources in order to go back and evaluate if they really do qualify to be nonprofits. So there's potential millions of dollars worth of property in Anchorage that has non-exempt status that really doesn't qualify anymore. But they just have never, I mean, in 20 years, they just don't have time or people to go back and check. And so that could be a very effective way to get more revenue onto the tax rolls, people that really should be paying. And that's just a comment. But when they're talking about upgrading their system, I think if I recall right, I can't remember whether it was Brian or somebody else from property appraisal, but at some meeting in the past year, I seem to recall somebody from property appraisal saying that they weren't in the position where they could get that system upgraded until SAP was done. And I don't know if it was because of resources, they just didn't have the IT resources in order to do it, or if there was some other factor, but I seem to recall the last administration basically was focusing on SAP first before they dealt with the other. So, it's going to be, obviously there's only so much resources to go around. So.
Thank you, Mr. Bosky. Before I go to Mr. Train, I just want to talk a little bit about Common Systems. It's older than PeopleSoft, and it was supposed to be updated, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, but my memory, SAP took precedence, and so I think that's something we need to talk about at this level and at the assembly level, because it really needs to be updated sooner than later. Mr. Trainee.
I'm saying in conjunction with what Mr. Bowski was saying, would you look and see what the process is for recertification of people, of organizations, they're tax exempt? I just want the administration to take a look at it and tell us what the process is, because we may very well need to upgrade and improve it, but I want to know what the standards are, because I don't want an organization going on to it and then 10 years later we realize it shouldn't have been. Okay, it's a lot of money out there. If you look at it, I'd like the administration's perspective on it, if you would, please.
And before I go to you, Ms. Nelson, let me follow up on Mr. Trainee's comment. When I first came on the Assembly in 2008, I worked with Marty McGee, and there were massive changes made to the property tax exemption and the time frame. So you might want to take a look at what's on the books, because it may very well already be there addressing what Mr. Trainee just said. So take a look at that. Thank you. Ms. Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're talking with Brian Robbins, what he was saying too, in the rapidly moving market that is going on with Anchorage, they need more people to do inspections so that they can keep up with the data that's going on. So anticipated issues for the next 3 to 5 years, required in the next 2 to 3 years, more inspections will be due. And one of the challenges, too, was staffing associated with that, and also then the other one I just explained or mentioned was the computer system. So that seemed to be this big, to keep up with this fast market.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Mr. Steele?
We are a voluntary reporting state. In other words, sales, you can voluntarily report it. But there is such thing as a mandatory reporting. And I guess my question is, I don't know, it's probably a state audit that have to happen, but that makes your appraisals a lot more accurate if you're able to get mandatory reporting, because you have more data. And so you do a better job of assessing.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Before I go to Mr. Bosky, Mr. Trainee may want to join in, but some years ago, Ms. Von Gemmiken tried to make that happen. And there were issues, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't revisit it again, but I remember how when I bought my home in 1994, I remember what I paid for it got exposed, because I was running my mouth on the elevator. But anyway, Mr. Bosky.
Yeah, when are you up for re-election? I'd love to see you go there.
It's
kind of like cat life. I'm saying. No,
there are people that
Well, not
no, but one of the interesting, it's a very interesting concept, Mr. Steele. And one of the things I remember, every time property appraisal gives us presentations, it always amazes me how close they are. If you look at how close they are in their estimations, they're actually very, very good at what they do. But I was going back to, in my mind I have a number, but I can't remember exactly how many property appraisers we have. How many people do we have that are in this department that actually are evaluating? I'm going to say 2 or 3.
I think the total
It's more than that.
close to 38 or
Well, I know it's a big division, but how many people are actually doing the appraisals?
I don't know.
There's not one that does.
Yeah, and for some reason in my mind I have like 3, but I don't think that's right.
I
Yeah.
don't see numbers in my house.
Well, I could go back to my budget book and look at the line. item.
Or you can go upstairs on the 6th floor and find out,
Ask,
just
yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Bosky?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Bosky. Mr. Trainee?
No, I was just gonna advise you to try cat licensing first. If you're into torture, before you do that reporting system, because it was bloody the last time. Every real estate agent hankeries, you can't do that,
Well,
this is
but-
why.
But they should embrace it because it gives them a better, and more accurate.
None of the
They
government's
should
business.
do two different things. Anyway, that was it.
That's not a reason. to
Thank
have
you.
it.
I'll give
Thank-
you, Mark tried to do some work after you did it.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Mr. Steele, Mr. Moore?
I was just going to comment on a few things that have been said. The CAMA system was attempted a few years ago. I was actually on the RFP committee, and we were all the way to the point of selecting the vendor. However, because SAP was really having trouble, we said we just don't have the IT resource to support it, so we called it off. So, and the value at that time was about $5 million is what we were looking at for a price. That system would be very beneficial to replace for lots of reasons. But SAP is still the big issue. So that was one point. Another point is on exemptions, just from a tax billing standpoint and a tax revenue standpoint. If you decrease the exemption for certain groups, it does help with revenue, but it doesn't help in a net way. It just shifts the burden. So the net revenue like available to OB is still going to be the same. So I just wanted to make sure that was known. And then on the disclosure state issue, I have heard in the past it's about 47 out of 50 states have mandatory disclosure, so we're actually an exception to that. There is a lot of accuracy on the residential side, but my understanding, just from past work sessions on the commercial side, not as accurate. So just threw that out there, just from things I've heard in the past with the property appraisal.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. And I'm going to follow up on your last comment. I remember clearly under the Begich administration, they did a lot of work to bring residential assessments to, the market value, but they didn't tackle or weren't able to tackle the commercial side. So you're exactly right. Any other comments before I make a few, Mr. Bosky?
I just have one. When we're talking about bringing these properties onto the tax rolls, and I recognize automatically what it'll do is it will distribute the tax burden, right? People who are getting an exemption that the rest of us subsidize that shouldn't be getting it will no longer get it. And I think ultimately what will that mean? That will mean property taxpayers across the municipality of Anchorage will have a lower tax bill. I think that's a good thing. I think that's positive for the community, and I don't think we should be subsidizing somebody getting an exemption when they don't qualify for it. I mean, it's, and so that's why when I talk about it, I think it's a good thing, especially in the current economy and the economy we're going into. If we can save people some money and let them afford maybe their medicine or food, then that's a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Bosky. Any other comments before I make some comments? Okay. So as we discussed at our last meeting, at our August Budget and Finance Committee meeting, we're going to have a representative or representatives from the homebrew community to get their thoughts on the fire sprinkler issue, because we've been talking about that for several meetings, and we're going to continue to have that discussion at the August meeting. I just wanted to remind everyone. And then I also want to remind everyone that, and all this is based on the Budget Advisory Commission's property assessment report that they provided to the Assembly, and I think that, Dan, you probably have a copy, and I know that it's available online. But anyway, we're also going to continue the discussion on nonprofits and their exemptions, but we're going to bring them to the table. And I have a letter that I received from the Foraker Group which I didn't distribute to anybody yet because I don't want to bombard you with paperwork when it's unnecessary. But before we have that discussion, everybody will have a copy of that letter with the agenda that goes out. But as soon as we're done with the fire sprinkler issue, then we're going to have the discussion on the nonprofit. Okay? Okay, audience participation?
Question, on the confirmation hearings, if you guys decide not to confirm someone, what would happen?
Yes, pick somebody
Maybe
else.
that's really literal.
Yes, pick somebody else.
Well, based on my experience, I don't remember, I mean, we've had confirmation hearings before when I was staff, but I don't remember the assembly not confirming somebody, but we came pretty close with a transit director some years ago because of some comments that we've heard were made. But I don't know, Mr. Trainer, do you remember not confirming?
Not in a long time, but I don't anticipate any problems. It's just more of a chance for us to get and meet the individuals. But they have to come in front of the assembly for confirmation. It takes 6 votes to prove it.
I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner, I guess, given that, people started, but,
So it's just a process, the time we have.
Right. And what do you mean sooner?
just before people were announced being appointed.
Well, the thing about it is, it's pretty timely how we're handling this because we don't have a document before us on the assembly agenda confirming anybody yet. We're going to have the confirmation hearings on the 24th, and then on the 28th, we'll have the actual assembly memorandum in front of us. So we're working through it, yeah. So and it's time.
Just confirming the procedure.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify that for you and for everybody else who's here. Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Okay. Any other comments from the committee? And no? All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.